General Grant lay dying. Still an old West Point classmate, now the governor of Kentucky, begged to see him. "I want you to know that the kindness you showed us Confederates at Appomattox will never be forgotten," said his guest. "You let us keep our dignity, even in defeat. For this, you'll have our undying regard." This brought a small smile to the stricken general's face, a sign of thanks to this friend who would, in just a few weeks, stand among Grant's pallbearers. Introduction. Many people know the American Civil War ended at a place called Appomattox. What few know is how amazing an ending it was, that the kindness and civility shown between the two armies there made it seem like real healing could begin, and soon, between the South and North, and between the white and black races. But then the advocates of revenge on both sides took over, making the path of healing far harder and more halting, which lasts even to this day. Still, it helps to know how close we came. Here then is the story of Appomattox, told in the true-to-life words of those who were there. The American Civil War began in 1861, when 11 southern states decided they wanted to become a separate nation, so they could grow their slave economy as they saw fit. But President Lincoln stood firm. The United States, he said, could not be divided into separate nations, and slavery, though allowed in the South by the Founding Fathers, could not spread to other parts of the country. This clash in views ultimately led to war between the southern states known as the Confederacy, fought by gray-clad rebels, and the northern states known as the Union, fought by blue-clad Yankees. For 4 years, the fighting was vicious, with over 700,000 soldiers dying, and no end to the bloodshed in sight, until the second Sunday of April, 1865. On that Sunday morning, when the brilliant top commander of the South, General Lee, crested a hill on his favorite horse, Traveler, there before him stood blue Yankee soldiers for as far as he could see, in every direction. Surrounded, Lee sent a white flag of surrender to the top northern general, Grant. And Grant, knowing how hard this must be on Lee, replied, "Tell General Lee that I will come meet with him wherever he wishes." The place picked was a brick house in the small village of Appomattox, nestled in the hill country of Virginia. The Southern General, Lee, arrived at the house first, wearing a crisp new uniform with a dazzling yellow sash, knowing, as he did, that many Northerners were calling for him to face a firing squad, and he intended to meet his fate with dignity. But President Lincoln spurned the idea of revenge. To Grant he said, "In victory, let's go easy." And together they agreed to extend an olive branch wherever possible, so they could put all their energy into healing the nation. When General Grant arrived at the meeting house, his crumpled blue uniform was caked in mud, with only the stars on his shoulders showing his superior rank. Entering the parlor, Grant greeted Lee courteously, apologizing for his appearance. Then, After chatting a little bit about old friends from West Point, he sat down to tell Lee the fate of his army. "Tell your men," said Grant, "that if they promise to fight no more, they can all go home." "Everyone? Home?" thought Lee. He was astonished. "But first, they will formally surrender their weapons, all rifles and muskets," continued Grant, "though their own personal guns they may keep." "And horses?" asked Lee. "Well, they'll soon be needing horses for their spring planting. So, yes, horses too." Lee accepted such generous terms without hesitating. "These conditions," he commented, "will have the best possible effect upon my men. But may I make a request? My troops have gone days without food, and I have none for them." "I will see to it," said Grant, "that food for your men and their horses will be on its way within the hour." "I am grateful," replied Lee, as the two generals stood, said goodbye, and departed, whereupon every Union officer waiting outside raised his hat in salute to the defeated general. The next day, Grant informed Lee that he would soon be leaving for Washington, before the formal surrender, thereby indicating that Lee too could leave and be spared having to watch his men give up their arms. Before he departed, Lee pledged, "Please tell Mr. Lincoln that I will do all I can to help rebuild the Union." In his last instructions to his staff, Grant said, "Make sure these Southerners are now treated as fellow countrymen, and don't add to their misery with any victory celebrations." Thus Grant and Lee left Appomattox, confident that the civility of their exchanges would spread throughout the ranks. And indeed it did. The formal surrender of arms that Grant insisted on was held 2 days later. This was a ceremony to underscore for the nation and the world that under President Lincoln, the United States would remain a single, unified nation, and now one without slavery, a source of deep satisfaction to the 2,000 war-hardened black Union soldiers present at Appomattox. The man put in charge of the surrender was the Yankee General Chamberlain, who, though shot in the chest just 2 weeks earlier, was there at the head of his troops on Wednesday morning to await the arrival of the defeated rebels, who soon appeared, threadbare and shoeless, but marching in perfect swing step behind their commander, General Gordon. "Those Confederates," wrote Chamberlain, "were thin and worn, yet they stood proudly erect, with eyes looking level into ours." Moved by this, Chamberlain, without any forethought, shouted out the command, "Carry arms," causing thousands of Yankees to snap their rifles to their shoulders to present their foes with the known salute of honor among soldiers. Seeing this, General Gordon slowly brought his horse to a standstill directly facing Chamberlain, and with a slight kick had his horse bow down as he withdrew his saber and touched it to the toe of his boot, thus answering honor with honor. Then Gordon ordered his troops to carry arms, to present a return display of mutual regard between hard-fought rivals. And for the next 7 hours, the two armies faced each other with tears streaming from the eyes of the men on both sides. Seeing those rebels who'd fought so well standing there whipped just seemed to us altogether sad, wrote one Yankee soldier. Such were the feelings as regiment after regiment of Confederate infantry stacked their rifles and their beloved bloodied battle flags, all the while in complete silence. Not a single hoot or holler came from our side, wrote Chamberlain. Just an awful stillness filled that long day. At its close, Chamberlain bowed his head, praying, "May God forgive us all. Every man here fought his heart out, but now it's over. Time for us all to take up our lives in peace and hopefully carry on the goodwill we've shared here at Appomattox." And indeed, the optimism among the soldiers heading home was high, racing to reach their families by Sunday for Easter. But that optimism was short-lived, for on Good Friday, just 2 days after the formal surrender at Appomattox, a weary but greatly heartened President Lincoln attended a play at Ford's Theater, where an assassin shot him at close range, and at 7:22 the following morning he died. Thus, the next day, Easter Sunday, broke not to a promise of healing, but to the sad news that the one man who most wanted to gather the South and North into his embrace was gone. And with his death, a shadow fell across his dream of binding up the nation's wounds and of assuring a life of freedom and dignity for everyone, no matter what state they lived in, no matter their race. And that shadow has yet to be fully dispelled, even to this day, although we do continue to strive to achieve the healing that once seemed near at hand in the respect and the kindness that the armies of the North and South extended to one another long ago at Appomattox.